Hello again, everyone. Today we're going to talk about something that's been raging on social media for the last couple of months, and it's called Axie Infinity. Now, this argument has been about two camps again, as usual, with people on one extreme claiming that the game is a scam, and the people on the other extreme that's saying this game is going to last forever and it's going to the moon. Of course, going to the moon with the cryptocurrency or in-game currency that's being used in Axie Infinity. Now, I'm going to tackle this topic not as a crypto expert, as I'm not a, I'm not. I do have a cursory idea of how that technology works, but I'm not a programmer, and neither am I a cryptologist or a cryptocurrency expert. However, I have been in business for more than 20 years, and I've been in the gaming space for that amount of time. So I'm going to look at it from the economic side of things, which is really the core of the argument, because they're not arguing about the technology, they're actually arguing about the economics of the game. Now, a basic law in economics is the law of supply and demand. So let's first examine where the supply of the SLP, which is the main currency used in the game and main form of rewards as that players receive in the game, is generated when people play the game. So in theory, this supply is infinite and unlimited as long as there are people playing the game. And the constant supply, is dependent on the amount of players playing the game. Now let's look at the demand side. The demand side is generated when new players come into the game and they need new Axies, which are the monsters used in this game. Now these monsters are generated by breeding existing Axies, and when you breed them, you need to use two forms of currency, which is SLP, which is the most common form of currency used to reward in the game, and AXS, which is a rarer form of currency, which is generally more controlled by Sky Mavis on how it is released and distributed. Once you purchase these Axies from other players or breeders, that's your way to get in, and that's how you start playing the game. So it's a one-time occurrence per player. So every new player that the game generates demand for Axies. However, on the supply side, as long as player continues playing, he will continuously supply and produce SLPs. Now we have an equation where I think which illustrates why there was a sudden spike where SLP, Smooth Love Potion, went up to almost 20 pesos, and why it's tapered down now to around 5 to 7 pesos. If you notice, what happened was when the price of SLP spiked, it was around the time when the hype was really, people were asking, what is Axie Infinity? How do you make money from it? So people were going in, and of course, with new people going in, there was a huge spike, and the current player base at that time wasn't that big yet. So there was a current spike of demand for new Axies, which generated demand for breeding, which generated demand for the SLP to be used up. Now, however, once these new players came in, the production of SLPs now goes up continuously, and this is continuous production. But let's assume that the generation of new players remains constant. So what happens is, after that initial surge of new players, what happens is the demand, let's say constantly there's a stream of 1,000 new players a day, but the amount of players producing SLP suddenly spiked to, let's say, now I don't know how many players there are, and let's say 300,000. So those players are now constantly producing that amount of SLP, no matter how many new players are generated. So there's that would explain the sudden spike and the tapering off the price of SLP. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only way that demand for SLP is generated, because Sky Mavis can eventually change the game, wherein SLP could be used for some other things within the game if they expand the game. But that's very dependent on what developments Sky Mavis does. They've also tried tweaking the supply side of the equation by choking the supply of SLP, by lowering the amount of SLPs players can generate per day. And that spiked up the price a little bit, but not enough to allow SLP to go up to their previous levels. And it's basically supply and demand, and it's basic economics. It's not some secret crypto technology programmers can only understand things. It's basic economics. Anybody with a basic economics, if you listened to your economics teacher in high school, you would understand this. This is fairly simple. Now, as far as SLP is concerned, now let's compare it to other cryptocurrencies. Generally speaking, cryptocurrencies are supposed to be decentralized, where not one person is or not one company is able to control or make decisions for that currency. However, with SLP or Smooth Love Potions, there is one company that determines or makes rules for how this currency is generated and how this currency is used. This, of course, like I previously said, Sky Mavis can change at any point in time the amount of SLPs players can generate by playing. Also, they can add expansions to the game that can generate demand for these SLPs. So it's in no way decentralized. Now, you can argue that, once something is in your wallet, it's yours. Yes, it's yours, but you don't control the rules that the rules for its generation or the rules for its consumption. Now, there will be people who will argue that SLP is now being used as an additional use case, is now being used by other companies as a means of currency or transacting business. Yes, there are, but I would not necessarily classify those as actual use cases, as they are more the exception rather than the rule. And honestly, I think most of these companies that are doing this as a means of marketing rather than an actual means of transacting business. What do I mean? When a company's, this is true even for the other types of cryptocurrencies, even Bitcoin, Tesla announcing that they're now accepting Bitcoin. These things are more of a marketing gimmick rather than an actual use case for the cryptocurrency, mainly because it's these companies targeting the people who are into these cryptocurrencies as a possible new market to sell to. Or on the another way you could look at it is these companies or these individuals who say that they would accept these cryptocurrencies are already heavily invested into these cryptocurrencies and therefore want to join the hype wagon, so they can hype up and therefore increase the value of their investments. Okay, so it's not a real genuine use case as of now, but it is a use case, but it's not a real use case of it as a real currency. So, and that's really mainly my point. Mm, and as I said, and in previously, cryptocurrencies are volatile. And when you're running a business, one thing you really hate is a very volatile currency, because you don't know if I accept this form of payment today and tomorrow I have to pay my suppliers, I've lost money. So let's say I accepted Bitcoin today and then charge this amount, and then tomorrow, let's say the value goes down by 30%, which is entirely possible with cryptocurrencies. Uh, and then I have to pay my supplier with Bitcoin, then I've already lost money. So it's not really a safe form of running a business. Not that government issued fiat currencies are stable, but relatively speaking, they're more stable. So in its current incarnation and how it behaves, cryptocurrencies aren't really uh, a good way to conduct business. It's perfectly fine for you to speculate or invest in it. I have nothing against that. If you speculate that in the future cryptocurrencies are going up in price, or you believe in something and its use case in the future, but currently it's not something you actually do business with. It's just not going to work. Uh, Another thing we have to look at when it comes to SLPs and Axie Infinity is we have to look at the previous history of games that had in-game currency. Currently, right now, I look at SLP as a form of in-game currency because that's its main use case. It's an in-game currency for you to transact inside the game, and we can look at things like Ragnarok with its Zenny, World of Warcraft with its gold, Diablo with its gold, and we know for a fact that during its heyday, these games, people who played it were able to sell the in-game currency for fiat money, for actual money, and it's perfectly fine. If your game generates enough interest and enough player base, so much that there are people who are willing to pay real money for in-game items or in-game currency, I think that's perfectly legitimate. I don't think it's something that's evil or a scam. It's the natural course of things. So if demand is generated, then of course people are going to be willing to pay money for that. So, however, we have to also look at the history of these games and how the value of their in-game currencies behave. I certainly remember a time when I was playing World of Warcraft that in-game gold was worth more than $1. And then by the end of when I stopped playing, I think it was like around 300 to 500 gold per $1. And Blizzard didn't actually allow people to sell in-game currency, but it was happening, and there's really no way they could stop it, as the transactions were happening outside the game. The only difference with Axie Infinity and it being backed by Ethereum is it doesn't pretend that its in-game currency is cannot be traded or it doesn't have value. It's just something that they accepted, and it's one of the things that they're using to market it. So that's the thing. It is a legitimate thing that happens. However, you have to look at the history again of these games as they peaked and as they declined. And I'm not here saying that Axie Infinity will eventually decline, but looking at history with these previous games, it's reasonable to think that eventually a newer game will come out that will be hotter and it will eclipse Axie Infinity. I'm not saying it will happen, but chances are it will. And even now, we're seeing a whole slew of online games that are supposedly play to earn. At the end of the day, I believe Axie Infinity is not a scam. It's a game, and a game's intrinsic value is in the entertainment that it provides. So as long as you're enjoying yourself playing Axie Infinity, then it's not a scam. I've been in the gaming industry for so long, and I know the value of entertainment. And if you're entertained and you're enjoying yourself playing Axie Infinity, you're not being scammed. You're being entertained. And if you feel that the money you put in is worthwhile, the enjoyment you're getting from it, then that's already a win situation for you. And if you earn a little bit of money on the side, then that's a plus. So, the only problem I really have with Axie Infinity is the way they're marketing it. And they're marketing it as play to earn. And that is where I see the danger lies. Now, I wouldn't suggest that people quit their day jobs or invest more than they're willing to risk, like their life savings or, their child's tuition for next year uh, into the game. But if it's something that you're willing to risk, and if it's an amount that you're willing to use for your entertainment, then it's perfectly fine. So that's it. Just be careful. This isn't financial advice. I'm not telling you to go ahead and invest money. I'm not telling you to go ahead and play the game. But I'm just giving you my 2 cents with regards to how the economics of Axie Infinity works. Thank you for listening. And again, good day.